In the land of dreams, nightmares are king. You might go years without having one, but when they do show up, they demand your attention like no other dream can. Time means nothing in nightmares. For that reason, Will had no idea how long he was sleeping. But whether he was out for an hour or a week, he spent every second of it locked in perpetual memory of the car crash. Many details evolved with each replaying, becoming something they never truly were. The landscape changed to a much grander setting than I-43. Snow flurries became an all-out blizzard, and despite the wind stinging his eyes, Will started to see the entire event unfold, as if watching it on TV while safely curled up at home. Each time, the creature became more terrifying. Even in his dreams, Will never got a good look at it. Fear of the unknown is highly distilled. It leaves your imagination to come up with one horrific possibility after another. The only thing Will could clearly see were the eyes. They haunted every moment of his dreams. Those eyes lingered on Will's mind when, finally, he woke up. Consciousness was a relief. It meant Will could finally escape the endless loop of nightmares. Gradually, he took in his surroundings. He was in a hospital, which didn't surprise him at all. A nurse was next to him, checking his vitals. "Good morning," said the nurse. "How are you feeling?" Will squinted, still adjusting to the light. "Sore," he said. His body was covered in dull aches, and his head was pounding. Will had the feeling it would be much worse if it weren't for the modern miracle of pain medication. She consulted her chart. "I bet you are. Looks like you're recovering well, though." Will massaged his forehead to find a large bandage covering it. Several smaller wrappings were scattered across his arms. Suddenly, a question rushed to him. "Are my parents okay?" The nurse stiffened, but her voice remained even. "Just try and rest for now. Dr. Thompson will be in later." Not leaving much time for argument, the nurse left. Will fell back asleep with an uneasiness in the pit of his stomach. By the time the doctor came, Will was awake again. Dr. Thompson was an older man, with comically bushy eyebrows and mustache. His expression, however, was not so comical. Hello, Will," he said in a husky voice. "How are you feeling?" That always seemed like a silly question to ask someone lying in a hospital bed. "Alright, I guess." The doctor took a seat next to the bed. "I expect you felt better. You suffered from a mild concussion. Aside from that, you have an impressive collection of cuts and bruises, none of which severe." Will tried to move, but a fresh wave of aches changed his mind. He hoped it was almost time for more medication, because he was beginning to feel like one giant bruise. "Have you felt any dizziness, nausea, or lack of motor skills?" asked the doctor. Will shook his head. "Any sensitivity to light, blurred vision, or ringing in your ears?" "A little bit of the light sensitivity," Will admitted, "but none of the other stuff." "Good." Dr. Thompson was taking notes as they spoke. "Now, Will, do you remember what happened last night?" Will's temperature dropped. He remembered the creature. He remembered a crash. And boy, did he ever remember those eyes. Or did he? His sleep was filled with nightmares, reshaping the event in more horrific detail. Awake now, he wasn't sure how much of it really happened. "I'm not sure," Will said. "I was having a lot of dreams. It all sort of blurs together." Dr. Thompson scribbled another note. "That's fine. Post-traumatic amnesia is common with head injuries of this nature." His expression turned grave as he put down his clipboard. "Will, you were in a very serious accident last night. While on the highway, your car slid across the median into oncoming traffic. You collided headfirst with another vehicle, resulting in a 4-car pileup. Perhaps Will spoke too soon about the nausea. His stomach suddenly felt ready to empty its contents. "Are my parents okay?" Will asked. The doctor let out a heavy sigh. "Paramedics were there as soon as possible, but it was bad. Your father passed away before they arrived. They did everything they could for your mother, but she died on the way to the hospital." He put his hand on Will's arm. "I'm so sorry, Will." It was like a switch was turned off in Will's mind, shutting off all thought and feeling. He was frozen in his place, unable to comprehend what he just heard. Dr. Thompson kept talking, but the words flowed meaninglessly through the air, the connection from ears to brain lost. He didn't hear the doctor stand up, but the sound of the closing door faintly registered. Will was alone now, alone in the room, alone in his life. He cried. There were no tears, just deep, hollow sobs. Eventually, he cried himself back to sleep. It was early morning when Will got the news from Dr. Thompson. The next time he woke up, it was past 4 o'clock. Mercifully, this sleep was completely dreamless. Will's mind was still too numb to think, and certainly couldn't conjure up something as complex as a dream. The nurse brought him a plate of food, which he ate in autopilot. Subconsciously, Will refused to believe that his parents were gone. Since he had no rational hope to cling to, his solution was to forego thought entirely. Shortly after Will's meal, the door opened. He expected to see the nurse, or perhaps Dr. Thompson, but he certainly didn't expect his great-uncle, Barbason. The old man stood in the doorway, hesitant to enter. He finally stepped inside, leaning heavily on his wooden cane. "Hey, kid." Will had no idea what to say. He could probably count the times he spoke with his great-uncle on one hand. Not to mention, of course, that the last time Will saw him, he had nearly gotten into a brawl with his dad. "Hi." Barbason sat down. "You feeling alright?" "Sure," Will said, who felt anything but alright. "I heard about the accident." Barbason sounded just as uncomfortable as Will felt. "I'm sorry." "It's okay." Will didn't want to address the issue of his parents. He brushed the topic aside as lightly as he could. The old man cleared his throat. There was a long, awkward pause before Barbason spoke again. "Listen, they was asking about you, and what all ye had as for family. Wanted to know if your dad had any relatives, stuff like that." In his denial, Will hadn't thought about where he would live. The more he considered it, the worse it looked. Dad was an only child. Both of his parents died when I was young. Yeah, that's what I was figuring. I told him I didn't think his folks were around no more. Barbason fiddled with his cane, keeping his eyes there instead of on Will. Well, seeing as we're related and all, they asked if it'd be alright if ye stay with me. Will tensed up. He didn't like the sound of this. What did you tell them? Said I'd ask what ye wanted. I want my parents, Will said flatly. Barbason looked directly at Will, his eyes flooded with remorse. You couldn't tell this was the same man who shouted harsh words at his brother's funeral. I wish I could do that for you, kid. I really do. But the best I've got is a roof and a bed. It's not much, but if you want it, it's yours. Will laid back on his pillow. He couldn't ignore reality any longer. He was now an orphan. Fighting back tears, he considered his options. If he turned down his great-uncle's offer, chances are Will would live in an orphanage. Maybe, if he was lucky, he might get into a foster home. The truth is, Will didn't like any of his options. But something about the sadness in his great-uncle's eyes made him feel connected to the old man. They might not know each other well, but ultimately they were still family. All right, Will said. If you'll have me, I'll stay with you.